Münsterhausen, Germany, population less than 2,000. Nestled among the rolling hills of southern Germany, about an hour's drive out of Munich, you'd be forgiven if you've never heard of it. Despite its small stature, for thrill seekers worldwide, it is the birthplace of rides that made them enthusiasts. Because from this small Bavarian factory, one man will fulfill a promise to himself and bring joy to millions around the world. The second of 14 children, Anton Schwarzkopf was born on July 8, 1924, into a family who was well known in Germany for creating caravans or trailers for traveling showmen, most notably in the circus. With the drums of war beating in Europe, young Anton begins his manufacturing career as an apprentice carpenter in a nearby town. However, just 6 weeks after his father was called to fight, his career would take a drastic turn. Anton came back to Münsterhausen, this time to help produce military vehicles for the war effort. 4 years later, when he turned 18, Schwarzkopf was drafted into the German army and was shipped off to Italy to assist in the fight for the Mediterranean. While over 100,000 of his fellow Germans would go on to lose their lives in the 2-year Italian campaign, fate would thankfully take the young Schwarzkopf on a much different path. After arriving in Italy, Anton was promptly captured by the Red Army and spent 2 years as a prisoner of war. It is here where he will make a fateful promise to himself.
If I survive all this, I will devote my entire life to machines that will make people happy, so that no one will endure what I have seen.
This is the moment, the spark that would shape the trajectory of Schwarzkopf's career. After the war, Schwarzkopf was released from the POW camp and returned to a much different Germany than he had left just a few years prior. In the Allied countries, the celebration has just begun after victory in Europe. However, in Germany, things are much different. Devastation, hopelessness, and despair rule the day. Many families have lost everything. And because so many Germans are homeless, there's a significant demand for caravans or mobile homes. As the country attempts to rebuild, many circuses and fairs are also in need of ways to transport themselves. Schwarzkopf is uniquely positioned to be successful in post-war Germany when so many others are not. After receiving his Master Craftsman's diploma and marrying his wife Frieda, Schwarzkopf starts his family with the birth of his son Wieland in 1955. He also continues to build trailers and other various items as the need arises. One of these customers is a traveling fair, asking the gifted builder if he can fix and repair some of their problematic amusement rides. Inspired by this work, Schwarzkopf remembers his POW promise to himself and decides to design and create his own ride for himself. Debuting in 1956, Düsen Spiral was built for German showman Luffelhardt. The ride featured indoor and outdoor sections and shallow drops, all capped with a unique spiral lift hill, which saves space for more ride elements. No one in Germany, or anywhere on Earth, had ever seen such a massive ride. Because it was so complex to set up, Anton's brother Franz had to travel with it to oversee construction and operation.
It was like a traveling ghost train, a ghost house with a people mover system. It was quite an adventure trip to that time because nobody had these. The technology was just after the war. It wasn't so excited, so they started to do this.
With the success of Düsen Spiral and its profitable travels throughout Germany, Schwarzkopf looked to expand his amusement ride empire. He started with a new addition to the family. His daughter Sylvia is born. That same year, Anton officially took over his father's company. But he wasn't looking to keep building the trailers that had made his family's name so respected and trusted in Germany. In September of 1962, Schwarzkopf is tasked by showman Schippers and Vanderville to build a bumper car ride for them. The engineering office in Munich that Schwarzkopf had contracted with was not very familiar with steel construction, which meant the project was falling further and further behind. The firm's newest employee, a college student hoping to be a civil engineer, was performing structural engineering work on the side to help pay the bills during the semester break. He asked to take the bumper car home for the weekend to see if he could finish the calculations and get the project back on track. When he returned on Monday, not only had the young man finished the needed calculations, the company immediately put him in charge of every project Schwarzkopf would bring them. That young engineer's name is Werner Stengel, and his dreams of doing civil engineering work officially end that fall of 1962 because a lifelong work relationship has just been forged in steel. During the 1950s and 60s, many German showmen operated small but portable wooden roller coasters such as Wild Mice and Side Frictions. They were bulky, time-consuming to set up, and even more difficult to move from town to town. Schwarzkopf once again saw an opportunity to bring joy to both riders and operators. When asked by Schippers and Vanderville if he could create a thrilling, all-steel roller coaster that could easily be transported, Schwarzkopf and Stengel got to work.
Believe it or not, his first roller coaster was only made by, let us try. No drawing, no technique, no engineer behind the whole construction. It was just, it should work. That was the only way to do it.
Originally utilizing stripped-down German automobiles as coaster cars, the Wildcat made its debut in 1964 to wild enthusiasm from riders and owners alike. Unlike the portable wooden coasters in use at the time, the Wildcat was larger and easier to assemble, thanks to its unique track support system, which folded out like a plant from its stem. This eliminated the need for a large and costly crane and allowed for just a few strong men to set up the coaster. It also made taking the ride down quick and efficient, which meant increased profits for operators.
The reason it's so important to us, we consider that to be a collector's item, a collector roller coaster, because it's one of the very few Anton Schwarzkopf coasters in the world. Now, Anton Schwarzkopf was famous among roller coaster people because on some of his tracks, when he wanted to do it, he could put a bucket of water in the car on a fast curve and not spill a drop of water. He was that good. And I met Anton Schwarzkopf probably in the 1960s when he was still around. He was real tall, didn't speak a word of English. I had to talk to him through a German interpreter, and he had that bright red hair, and he looked exactly like Goldfinger. And that was him. And I had to talk, and I asked him all kinds of questions. He was so nice, and he was just a great guy. This is a 65 model Schwarzkopf. And there's two of these in the fair world. There's one at the Washington State Fair in Puyallup, which is outside of Seattle, and then you got this one. And these are the two largest coasters at any fairgrounds in America.
Schwarzkopf and Stengel will create 3 different Wildcat sizes: 45 meters, 54 meters, and 65 meters, named for the space that each one occupies. They will become one of Schwarzkopf's most prolific and popular designs.
One of the individuals that I got to meet a long time ago is a gentleman by the name of Ed Hiller. And Ed Hiller and I are great friends. He runs Ride Entertainment Group, and he has a special place in my heart. I had gone to Ed when we started building Adventure Park USA, and I was so bent on having a roller coaster that I was willing to do anything, even mortgage my farm to borrow the money to put in a roller coaster in Adventure Park USA. 2006 rolls around, my phone rings, it's Ed Hiller. We found the perfect coaster for you, and it's up at this place called Williams Grove Amusement Park. So they erected this ride. This ride had been originally built in 1974 for Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and then it had been moved around. It went to Steel Pier, New Jersey. It went to a couple different parks, and then it ended up in Williams Grove. And it was an amazing endeavor. It almost killed me. It was no joke. It almost killed me. It was such a difficult build. And now here it is, and we're putting up a roller coaster.
The success of the Wildcat models doesn't go unnoticed. In 1967, Reinhold and Robert Spieldener, along with their friend Ali Seiko, decide to form a new sales company in nearby Switzerland. They call it International Amusement Installations, or Intamin for short. One of their first tasks? Reach out to Schwarzkopf and convince him they can sell his rides so he can better focus on building them. It doesn't take long for the sales agreement to be signed, and with it, Schwarzkopf goes from a small, well-known German manufacturer to an internationally recognized powerhouse. Just a year after signing their agreement with Intamin, Schwarzkopf and Stengel were set to debut two all-new, fully portable attractions: a flat ride dubbed the Monster, and a new coaster design, the Jetstar. Similar in style to the Airily Aircraft Octopus ride, Schwarzkopf's model featured a notable improvement: superior capacity. By loading all of the passengers at ground level, it meant more riders per hour, and for carnival operators, more riders meant more revenue. At the same time, the company unveiled Jetstar, its newest portable coaster, with the first one going to Austrian showman Steindl of Vienna.
The lively expanded boardwalk with new rides like the exciting Jetstar, plus all the great old favorites including the Giant Dipper, give Santa Cruz Beach the best boardwalk attractions at California's finest seashore playland. Enjoy glorious, carefree summer days and evenings now at Santa Cruz Beach and Boardwalk.
After seeing the benefits of tubular steel track from American rival Aero Development, Schwarzkopf and Stengel immediately adopt the innovation and create a new pipe bending machine that allows them to create far more complex turns than before. Featuring tight, ground-hugging curves and inline single-row seating, these small but mighty coasters pack quite the punch compared to their Wildcat predecessors. But they are not just limited to the fair circuit. Several Jetstars found their way as permanent installations at smaller American amusement parks.
The most memorable rides I had was with Gerald Ford's daughter. She was here with her Secret Service husband and another Secret Service guy. And we're going around the park, and so everybody came over to ride the Jetstar. She gets in the front, her husband, then me, then the other Secret Service, and it was packing. They're both packing. So that was my most memorable ride on the Jetstar.
Much like today's technology, Schwarzkopf always kept looking to upgrade their offerings. When German showman Rick Hanover asked for a more compact version of the Jetstar, Schwarzkopf took a page from his past to bring it to life. Utilizing a similar layout and elements to the original Jetstar, the aptly named Jetstar 2 added a spiral lift, which, just like on Duesen's Spiral, saves space. Plus, the circular section doubled as a crane mount point, making setup and teardown very efficient.
I remember Jetstar for sure because I was with my sister and she wanted me to be in front of her and I really didn't want to be, and I was a little scared, and you know, she's older than me, so I sat in front and I was terrified, but I loved it. That was my dad's first ride that he did here, and it was such a big deal at the time because it was so expensive. Everybody's always going for bigger, faster coasters, but there's just something different. It's what makes us unique. There's just something different about the older coasters.
Jetstar 2, we put it in the late 70s. It was actually before I started working here by 2 or 3 years. It was bought as a used ride also. It is in a kind of World's Fair. And they brought in the fair and brought here. And I love the nostalgia. I'm an old guy, so I like nostalgia. They're showing their age. Sometimes we have to rebuilding and make our own parts on something, but it's worth it. Absolutely.
With the success of 3 portable coaster designs and several flat rides, Schwarzkopf is poised to break into the biggest and fastest growing attractions market outside of Germany, the United States. Six Flags Over Texas, located in Arlington, is looking for a way to celebrate their 10th anniversary in style.
Six Flags Over Texas, the Stephen Brodley way where he was used to stand.
A tribute to the Six Nations that once ruled over the Lone Star State, Six Flags management already have several Schwarzkopf and Intamin products in the park. Now they're looking for something new and different. Not wanting to risk creating something revolutionary, Schwarzkopf and Stengel opt for an evolutionary ride instead. They end up taking the best elements of the compact Jetstars, give the new coaster a permanent structure, multiple lifts, and a longer train for increased capacity. They dub the new model the Speed Racer. Six Flags calls it the Big Bend.
The Big Bend is one of the coolest coasters for its time. No restraints. You sat way down inside the cars. Each individual car had its own electric motor in it, and it would pull itself up a spiral lift hill. And once it got to the top, that first drop wasn't very steep. It was like a 45-degree angle. Top speed was around 50. But the turns were so tight and so at a high angle of bank that it made you feel like you were going so much faster than you were. And that first one was like 2.5 feet off the ground. It just made you feel like you were flying down the track.
Standing an unassuming 81 feet tall and with a top speed of just 52 miles per hour, the Big Bend was hardly a record breaker, but it's the appeal of low, ground-hugging curves that make the ride feel faster than it actually is, and the unique inline seating made for a great first-date coaster. The ride is a huge hit with the public, to the point of being too popular. With a maximum capacity of just 600 riders per hour, the Big Bend earns the nickname of the Big Line with its multi-hour waits. The unpredictable Texas weather certainly doesn't help either. Even small amounts of rain or even dew force the ride to shut down. But for those who did ride it, the experience is unforgettable. The same year as Speed Racer's debut, Schwarzkopf didn't let off the gas. The company also debuted a larger portable version of the Jetstar 2, initially called Jetstar 3. That is, until the Boeing 747 began flying passengers in 1970. It had earned the nickname of Jumbo Jet from the press. And since this was now the largest Jetstar model, the Jetstar 3 officially became the Jumbo Jet. But Schwarzkopf knew that not every park or carnival operator was looking for such a large ride. Just a year later, Schwarzkopf pulls a complete 180 and creates their smallest coaster yet, the City Jet. Once again, Schwarzkopf uses a space-saving spiral lift and Speed Racer trains, but squeezing everything into a space even smaller than the original Jetstar. 10 of these tiny coasters will be built, giving Schwarzkopf a formidable portfolio that spans small and large portables. Lamar Hunt and Jack Stedman, two prominent businessmen from Kansas City, contact Schwarzkopf, asking if he can build them 2 coasters for their new theme park, Worlds of Fun. The first is a standard Wildcat model that they call Shush Boomer, and the second is an improved version of the Speed Racer dubbed Zambezi Zinger.
So Lee Darrow was the GM at Worlds of Fun from 1974 to 1988, I believe. But she was their director of promotions when they first opened the park, and they tasked him with naming all the rides. And so he kind of hit a speed bump, and he and some friends got a little lubricated one night, decided to come up with the name Zambezi Zinger. So they said, we have a roller coaster in the Africa section. It's this Jumbo Jet Schwarzkopf. What are we going to name it? And it's Zinger. It's a Zambezi Zinger, and the rest is history.
Built in the Africa section of the park, the trains featured zebra stripes and an elaborately themed queue house. Unlike Big Bend, Zinger featured subterranean tunnels and nearly double the capacity thanks to longer trains and several block break zones. Much like its counterpart in Texas, Zambezi Zinger will go on to become the stuff of local legend during its run at the park. During this incredible decade of growth, Schwarzkopf will continue to innovate both portable and permanent attractions. His latest offering is a rotor-style attraction that positions riders in swinging vehicles on the outside of the turntable, allowing riders to flip upside down but without the need for any sort of restraint. The clever capsule design and G-forces keep the passengers safely in their seats. He markets the ride as the Enterprise, since it felt like you were going to orbit in a spaceship. Unfortunately for Schwarzkopf, when he applies for the patent, he's shocked to discover that it's denied, and instead given to rival flat ride manufacturer who simply copied his design and refined it. 20 of his Enterprises will be built versus 95 Hoos models. It is the start of unfortunate business luck to fall upon Schwarzkopf's company. Despite the patent loss, the next 2 years are already looking up, with several major contracts that will throw Schwarzkopf's world for a loop. In order to meet the increased capacity, Schwarzkopf again must expand his factory. This time, he chooses an unused plot of land across the meadow from the original, which allows for significantly more production space and prototype testing grounds. As Schwarzkopf prepares his new manufacturing space, he'll quickly put it to good use. The United States is preparing to celebrate America's bicentennial. Eager to jump on the bandwagon, the Marriott Corporation, who was already looking to expand their hotel business, decides to build not one, but 2 theme parks, themed after the best of America.
Marriott's Great America. Marriott's Great America. Where history lives in song and dance. There's mystery, fun, and romance. It's all at Marriott.
Located just outside 2 major metro areas, Santa Clara, California, and Gurnee, Illinois, the nearly identical Great America parks will debut with 9 Schwarzkopf products between them. Yukon Yahoo, a barren curve. Fiddler's Fling, a calypso. Orleans Orbit, an Enterprise. The Lobster, a monster. And Willard's Whizzer, the 3rd and 4th Speed Racer coasters to be built.
This was the ride as a kid that you kind of graduated to. You got off of the kid rides, and this was like a first real roller coaster as a kid to go on. I remember riding this with my mom, right? And other rides, you sit next to your parent. On this, you're like in your parent's lap. It's like you become kind of one with your kid on a ride like this, and it's thrilling for both of you. Like, it's thrilling for a kid to sit here and to hold on to the front and looking right over the edge of the front car, or even any car on this, you kind of feel like you're in the front seat here. It's like the perfect ride to usher your child into a love of coasters. You feel safe in it because you're there with your parent, with your maybe significant other that you're with, and you are truly riding a ride together.
It was a core memory for me, was sitting on my mom's lap and riding this ride. It's something that I will never forget. And here, working here now, it's really full circle for me because I remember riding this as a kid. And again, here I am at 26 and I still find this ride fun and enjoyable.
Featuring elongated trains, sweeping turns, and a powered spiral lift, the two wizards become very popular with families, and the rides quickly establish a positive rapport with the locals.
This is a really special ride. And to me, to have a park that has a ride like this that is still keeping it going, because I can imagine that it's a challenge sometimes to maintain this, but they do it. And I love that this place has a love for it enough to keep it up, and I just hope that it's around forever. I really do.
The Wizard is it's a unique speed racer, so they're just unique attractions, and I'm just honored to be a part of the history that is Chicago and what this ride brings to that history.
If I could tell Anton one more thing, he should have made more of them.
But Schwarzkopf and team will not have any time to rest. Another of their coasters are already taking shape in the hills above Los Angeles. While Aero Development is working on refining their corkscrew, the world's first modern looping coaster for Knott's Berry Farm, Schwarzkopf and Stengel have their eyes set on an even more iconic element, the vertical loop. While hardly a new concept, looping roller coasters had been around since the turn of the century, but none were built after the Roaring 20s. That's because they all had one major flaw: they weren't safe. Whether it was bad mechanical design, a lack of restraints, or extreme G-forces, they had all but disappeared to become the stuff of urban legend. So when Intamin was approached by the Newhall Land and Farming Company, asking if they could build a custom coaster for their new amusement park, Magic Mountain, they knew exactly who to go to in their portfolio. With an injection of needed working capital, construction began immediately on a full-scale loop prototype in Germany to prove the naysayers wrong. It is said that Schwarzkopf would purposely stall the train in the apex of the loop to show that even in the worst-case scenario, his simple lap bar would keep passengers in the train. So while the lawyers were convinced, the park had one more concern with the loop: the way it looked. Magic Mountain had already printed tens of thousands of t-shirts for guests to proudly proclaim they had survived the ride. But the loop on the shirt didn't quite match the one that was designed. The park went back to Stengel, asking if he could more closely match the design on the shirt, and amazingly, he did. After the loop had finally been worked out, Schwarzkopf used the natural terrain of the park to his full advantage, designing over 3,400 feet of meandering track for the ride. Never one to waste, Schwarzkopf integrated the prototype loop, built into a portable base frame, into the ride's final permanent track work. On May 8, 1976, Magic Mountain officially unveiled the Great American Revolution, the world's first modern vertical looping roller coaster. Had it been delayed by just 1 week, Revolution would have lost its historic looping status to the newly opened corkscrew at Cedar Point. Neither Aero or Schwarzkopf knew each other was developing a vertical loop.
You've waited long enough. The ultimate white knuckler is ready. But before you ride it, take a good long look. It'll make your eyes start glazing, make your fingers start to shake, make your forehead sweat profusely, make your body start to quake.
This is the place where you start talking to yourself.
Turn your insides kind of outside. Your knees begin to knock. Paint a streak of lemon yellow down your back and through your socks.
Man was not meant to do that.
When the noise begins to deafen till it churns your whole inside, you'll be longing for the quiet of those great white knuckle rides.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid either.
Makes your teeth begin to chatter, makes nerves of steel go soft. Magic Mountain's Revolution, it'll knock your socks flat off.
We had a marketing campaign, was that Revolution would knock your socks off. So during those early days when it first opened up, people would stand on the observation deck underneath the loop, and when the train came by, they'd take their socks off and throw socks at the train. So in the morning, before we opened, we'd have to go down and pick up all these dirty, smelly socks that were laying on the ground and get rid of them, and only to repeat that every single day. Actually met Anton Schwarzkopf. I was a ride operator, so I didn't really appreciate the gravity of who it was I was talking to, but I did have a conversation with him. He was just a great guy. He was really interested in just watching it operate, so we talked quite a bit. I was a huge fan by then. There was nothing about that ride I didn't know. I was a ride operator when the park was open, and then I was an apprentice ride mechanic during the week doing maintenance on the ride as well. So we had some real good conversations, and I always look back on that it was my opportunity to really, converse with such a legend in our industry.
With its high capacity and broad appeal, Revolution instantly became not only an icon for Magic Mountain, but a bona fide media sensation. With major roles in the 1977 film Roller Coaster and National Lampoon's Vacation, and features with Super Dave Osborne, Revolution was arguably the most famous roller coaster in the world outside of the Coney Island Cyclone. But those on the East Coast might have an argument to make about that. Hershey Park, already home to several smaller coasters, is looking to make a statement of their own. Similar to Revolution, Schwarzkopf gets to flex his creative muscle by using the natural terrain of the land, but with an added twist. He can't have any of his supports in Spring Creek, which runs directly through the ride site. Despite the limitations, Schwarzkopf is able to squeeze in 2,600 feet of track and a vertical loop, all without ever touching the creek. But what to call this new thrill ride, which would be the first of its kind on the East Coast? Initially, a park executive was leaning towards Mary Dairy Dip as it referenced the nearby township. However, when he presented the idea to his wife and children, they voted on an alternative, Super Duper Looper.
The really exciting thing about the Super Duper Looper is it was the first looping roller coaster on the East Coast, following its sibling on the West Coast at Magic Mountain. And the interesting thing about Hershey's relationship with Schwarzkopf in general is, at the time, Intamin was representing the sales arm of Schwarzkopf. We had recently installed our Kissing Tower, our Sky Ride, and our Giant Wheel. So we had a very good working relationship and some familiarity with Intamin. So the relationship kind of fit at that time to take a look at Schwarzkopf.
I remember meeting Anton Schwarzkopf when I was 15 years old. I got a job in Seaside Heights working for an importer of rides who also set the rides up on Casino Pier, and he would sell them from there. One of the first rides I had the privilege to set up was a Jetstar 1. I found out that the gentleman from the factory who was there telling us how to do our jobs was Anton Schwarzkopf. He was very intent, and he knew what he wanted. I remember I was greasing wheels on the cars, and next thing I know, there's a hand on my shoulder, and he told me, son, remember, he who packs bearings pushes. So I remembered to never over-grease the bearings after that.
Capitalizing on the immense popularity of the ride, the park created an I Survive Super Duper Looper shirt and sold over 200,000 the first 5 years the ride was open. In fact, you can still buy the same design to this day.
Super Duper Looper is crazy! It takes you upside down.
The whole flavor of this place is absolutely delicious.
Open daily now through Labor Day, and be sure to ride the sensational Super Duper Looper.
Good times to be had.
Continuing an incredible run of ride innovation, as Revolution is completed in California, Schwarzkopf is already hard at work on their latest innovation, the Shuttle Loop. Unlike rival Aero Development's high elevation design that featured drops, Schwarzkopf worked directly with Intamin's Reinhold Spieldiener to create a ride that shot riders out of the station into a vertical loop and then up a nearly vertical spike, only to fall backwards through the entire circuit before coming to a sudden stop. Taking inspiration from aircraft carrier steam catapults and the Wright brothers' first flight, they dropped a large weight to propel trains up to 55 miles per hour in just 4 seconds. However, testing the 40-ton counterweight didn't go exactly to plan in Germany.
The first shuttle loop was with the weight tower. And to that time, it was the prototype. Nobody knows exactly how many weight we need. It was a Sunday morning. Somebody put in more weight, forgot that there's a limit. It was too much weight on, and they started the test. The whole village was like an earthquake on that morning because the weight was too much, too high, and the weight was falling down. The rope was broken, and it was going 4 or 5 meters in the ground. And can you imagine the whole city, the whole village was earthquake. People was in the church that morning, and Father God made an earthquake in Münsterhaus, and it was. That's the story. That's the story. Yeah.
With the weight drop situation sorted out, Schwarzkopf is ready to make his first sale, but his first customer wasn't terribly thrilled with the ride's finale.
And I said, well, you know, I like a lot of these elements, but the thing that concerns me the most is if that ride comes back through the loop after going up that upsweep, and it would have an issue in the station and it would hit a brake or something, that would be quite a jolt to the riders. And we got a napkin and we kind of drew it on. I said, what if we put an upsweep at the launch end of it? So if it came back through, rather than having an abrupt stop, it would go up the hill and then come back down in. So we did that, and they liked that. And the train launches out of the station. It goes into the loop. It hesitates for just a second. The 2 sandbags in the front car, they fall out at the top of the loop, and the train has continued through the loop now. And the sandbags are caught in the last seats of the train. And I looked at Mr. Schwarzkopf and Schnabel, and I said, oh, gee, what a great ride you've developed here. I said, that's really comforting to know. If our riders fall out in the front, they'll be caught in the back. So that gives me great pleasure and comfort to know that this is going to happen.
Despite the man-made earthquakes and sacrificed sandbags, King Cobra opens in early 1977 as the world's second launched roller coaster. It misses being the first by just weeks, thanks to Aero Development's own shuttle loop opening at Kings Island, Demon. Thanks to its small footprint, reasonable cost, and big thrills, 12 shuttle loops will be ordered, making it one of the most popular of Schwarzkopf's designs.
I have created the most terrifying new contraption for Marriott's Great America, the tidal wave! Ooh. First, you're shot forward. Ooh. Next, the torturous loop. Up and down, then up again to blood-chilling heights. And then, you fall, screaming through the entire ride, backward. But would you ride this? You think I'm crazy?
The TV ad was hysterical. We showed a German mad scientist. Now, why did we do that? We did that because we had a mad scientist building the ride. We had Anton Schwarzkopf, the great designer who designed this ride. And I went down to the ride, and Anton Schwarzkopf and some of his other team were there supervising the installation. Went up and talked to them about the ride and tried to get some sense of what was going on. And it was through our ad agency and us going down talking to them that this whole idea of the mad scientist came about.
Speed sensors activated. T-minus 2, 1.
Freeze lightning.
Ever the tinkerer, Schwarzkopf continued to upgrade the shuttle loop. First, by changing the design of the loop to be easier to maintain and more minimalistic. But an even bigger improvement is with the launch system. Gone was the 40-ton weight and large tube at the end of the track, and in was a more powerful, consistent flywheel launch. The debut of the new improved shuttle loop happens just an hour's drive from Magic Mountain, this time in Buena Park at Knott's Berry Farm. But naming the new ride proves to be a bit difficult. Placed in the Fiesta Village section of the park, the shuttle loop is originally marketed as Locomotion. However, someone in the marketing department shifts course and names a ride after a local band that frequently plays at the park. On May 21, 1978, Montezuma's Revenge debuts at Knott's Berry Farm, becoming the first flywheel launch shuttle loop, and it will become the preferred launch system for every model that follows it.
He's just a little guy. He wasn't sure he wanted to try it. There's a feeling that comes over you. Those little fingers grabbing your hand, you know what's racing through his mind. 'Cause you're doing what you want to do.
Seeing the rise in popularity and attendance at parks with looping coasters, Six Flags reached out to both Schwarzkopf and their American rival Aero Development to see what they could bring to their two original parks, Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags Over Georgia. Already the home to the legendary Big Bend, Over Texas and Arlington asked the two manufacturers for a record-breaking back-to-back double-loop roller coaster prominently located next to the Dallas-Fort Worth Turnpike and above the temperamental Johnson Creek. Both companies submit significantly different concepts. While Aero had built many prior projects in the park, it was Schwarzkopf's record-breaking design that won the contract. Construction continued at a feverish pace through the off-season, all in time to have the ride ready for opening day. After months of construction, Shockwave opened on April 22, 1978 as the tallest, fastest double-loop roller coaster on the planet. It held this impressive record for just 41 days. Ironically, it fell to rival Aero Development and their legendary Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. But that didn't seem to dissuade the motorists in Texas.
When Shockwave opened in May of '78, there were countless numbers of traffic accidents out on the Dallas-Fort Worth Turnpike or Interstate 30. People were stopping to watch. They had never seen anything like this either, a double-loop roller coaster. And Copeland Road, which is right next to the coaster, people were stopping there. Police were having to stand out there and make people move along because they were blocking traffic, and people were stopping and standing along the side of the highway. It was a spectacle for the first 2 or 3 years it was out there. It was a traffic menace for a while.
Unlike Aero's design, Shockwave featured a novel new concept in roller coasters: heartlining. By bending the box track the same way a motorcyclist turns into a curve, Schwarzkopf and Stengel could transition smoothly between straight and compound turns, something their American rival could not. It would go on to become a defining feature of all of their coasters, and it was done without the help of computer-aided design, which was still over 15 years away from being adopted.
While working the ride operator on Shockwave in 1979, I had the unique opportunity one day, and I got a call from Ada Walker. She informed me that Errol and a gentleman by the name of Anton Schwarzkopf, the ride designer and builder, would be coming down to the ride. He and Errol took 2 spins in the back seat first, and then they came back up and they rode 2 times in the front seat. And then after 4 times, he said he had rode enough. And he asked if he could stay up on the station and admire his ride a little bit. He wanted to watch it run. He wanted to hear the sights and the sounds and see the people enjoying the ride and the screams and everything. Anton started noticing that up in the front of the car, a few of the little kids would seem to deposit something over on the side of the rail. And he started noticing this time and time again. And he got frustrated, and he came over to me and says, "You must shut your ride down. There's something wrong with my ride." And I said, "No, Mr. Schwarzkopf, your ride is working perfectly. There is nothing wrong with your ride whatsoever." So I told Anton to watch the kid in the second seat. And so he watched him. We dispatched the train. It goes through the loops, goes through the rest of the ride, comes into the break, rolls it into the station. We pop the bars. The kid gets out, goes to the side of the rail over by the exit ramp and decides to puke and move on his way down the stairs. What is happening is that you have the combination of the heat today. Number two, you've got the high humidity. And number three, these kids have just come through the Pink Thing stand where they ate a pink ice cream as they came up the beginning of the ride on the queue line. And I said, look, right here, here's another kid, the pink lips, we'll do it. So we wagered on it, and he said, it's not gonna happen. He pulls out a 20 German mark, I pull out a 20 American dollar bill, I hand them Daryl McCoy's the bank, and we made a wager on the side of the station. The kid comes back in, he throws up, I get my German mark, I get my $20 back, and I made 20 German dollars that day. So anyway, this goes on a few more times, and Anton just shakes his head, and I said, what is it, Anton? And he kind of acts like Santa Claus at this time. He grabs his vest right here, and he rears back almost like a Santa Claus would, and he goes, slaps me on the side of the shoulder, and he says, ho, 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 you crazy Americans, you always know how to make the money.
Just a few weeks prior to Shockwave's opening, Six Flags Over Georgia had debuted what many believe to be one of Schwarzkopf's most beautiful designs. Once again taking full advantage of terrain, Schwarzkopf placed 2 loops at different elevations, separated by a giant sweeping drop. The park officially christened the ride Mindbender.
So this was the first looping roller coaster I ever rode. When I was a kid, I was actually pretty scared of roller coasters. My dad convinced me as a 13-year-old to try out Mindbender for the first time. I've been in love with roller coasters ever since, and just the nostalgia this ride gives me is second to none.
The first time I came to Six Flags Over Georgia, it was specifically to ride Mindbender because it was the first coaster that I knew of that had a vertical loop. It was a true vertical, upside-down experience. When you hit the loops of Mindbender, you know you're in a positive G. You know you're not going to fall out of the train. The funniest experiences I had on Mindbender were people who had only had over-the-shoulder restraints, and they would come here in the 90s, and they would get on the train and look for the over-the-shoulder and go, I'm going to fall out of this. The childhood cries of why are there over-shoulder restraints on this ride when Mindbender doesn't have them was a very complex discussion in my household.
With these 2 massive coasters and intense flat rides, Schwarzkopf has cemented itself in the USA, but doesn't forget about his roots on the carnival circuit. In the same year as Mindbender and Shockwave opening, Schwarzkopf again makes history by delivering the world's first portable looping roller coaster, Looping Star. The design is the first to use a plug and cone system that allowed for rapid but solid assembly of track pieces with just cotter pins. It's an innovation that quickly becomes adopted not just for Schwarzkopf, but most portable ride builders. Built for German showmen Kinsler and Bruch, Looping Star features a single loop surrounded by several swooping curves. Adding to the genius of the design, the structure around the loop helps dissipate its forces, and a giant water ballast tank below the loop acts like a concrete foundation, holding the loop in place even with a multi-ton train racing through it. Always looking to tinker with a good thing, Schwarzkopf shrinks his Looping Star, hoping it will be popular with smaller showmen. While his Silver Arrow model only sells 3 units, one is converted for permanent installation at Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay. In 1980, Floridians are introduced to the powerful sting of Scorpion.
It unveils the Scorpion today. It's a roller coaster. We're told it goes 50 miles an hour, pulls 3.5 Gs, and we have a lot of celebrities and people from the media that are going to ride it, including me. I'm going to put the mic down and find out about it. We'll tell you what the ride's like in just a moment. Let's watch.
At the same time, German showman Barth is looking to one-up his rival Oscar Bruch with a bigger, more intense coaster of his own. Schwarzkopf obliges, adding a second inversion to the Looping Star layout and christens it Doppellooping, or double loop.
I remember my dad specifically telling me when he wanted to bring the Colossus to Lagoon that Peter and Bob said, no way, absolutely no. No way, no way. And my great uncle Dew, no way, and he wanted to bring it in, and it was a huge deal, and it was a huge deal for Farmington too, because it was, I mean, huge. You know, we've got our gorgeous mountain backdrop, But it was a big deal. It really changed the town as well. And it's great to have those special rides that people come to this park just to see those rides, just to go on them. Colossus, for sure, I remember riding with my dad. I mean, it was back when we used to take photos, and I remember that so well. And I remember him saying, try to keep your head back, keep your head back. And I remember his hand right here on my chest trying to keep my head back so that I wouldn't get stuck like this. Great memories.
The next year, Schwarzkopf introduces their smallest and oddest coaster ever, Catapult. Stripping down just about everything from their previous rides, Catapult uses a series of drive tires which are all connected to a single motor. They propel the train through the curved station and into a vertical loop, all on the space of a postage stamp. More an oddity than a sales success, the model only sees 5 orders, and throughout the 1980s, they can be found on the traveling fair circuit. Taking the lessons learned from the small Catapult models, Schwarzkopf again experimented with what a steel coaster could do, this time opting for a new type of shuttle loop. Since the ride will debut at the Wiener Prater in Vienna, he calls the ride Wiener Looping. Featuring a tilted station, 2 drive tire launches, and a pierced vertical loop, Wiener Looping is unlike anything Anton has ever built before. And it's completely portable. Engineering a clean sheet ride is expensive, and manufacturers usually try to recover this initial cost by duplicating or cloning the design for other customers. Despite its quirky design and popularity wherever it goes, Schwarzkopf is unable to sell additional units, making Wiener Looping a unique but expensive one-off. Yet with every design and innovation that the company made, Schwarzkopf kept learning how to do it better and figured out ways to integrate what he had learned into his next attraction. He also had a secret weapon, his daughter Sylvia.
My sister worked with him, and she has the design head as my father. She got it. She got full. She was with him. He told her, well, that's the idea, and she took it immediately on paper. She knew exactly what he wanted.
Together with Wieland running the spare parts department, the Schwarzkopfs made a formidable team and owe a great deal of their success in the 70s and 80s to this unique family dynamic. Taking the vision from Anton, applying it to paper with Sylvia, and the support of Wieland, Schwarzkopf creates yet another one-off portable, Münchnerbahn. Using the drive tire system he perfected on Catapult and Wiener Looping, combined with the compact style of the Wildcat, Münchnerbahn also had some unique features found only on it. The station was placed half the distance up the lift hill, giving riders a bit of a workout getting to it, but much like Wiener Looping, only a single model was sold to a German showman, and all of the engineering that went into the ride didn't translate into a healthy profit. Coupled with the lackluster sales, Intamin decides to shift their attention to another company, Wagner Bureau, leaving Schwarzkopf to make their own sales calls. Sensing rough waters ahead, one of Schwarzkopf's electrical engineers, Hubert Gerstlauer, also decides to depart and form his own manufacturing company, Gerstlauer Electro. Hubert will continue to provide the electrical systems necessary to run Schwarzkopf attractions. Undeterred by the lack of sales and loss of talent, Schwarzkopf defiantly plows ahead, preparing to make history again with yet another record-breaking coaster. The Bruch family, looking to compete with rival Barth's double looping coaster, is in the market for their own massive but portable coaster. But there's a catch. The family doesn't believe that loops are the answer.
Well, it's been in my family the whole time since it was built. Anton Schwarzkopf and my dad together thought about something when there was a big hype about looping coasters. And they wanted to build something different. They wanted to build a ride, a big coaster for the whole family. And they came up with this, and I think they did great.
So with the gauntlet laid, Schwarzkopf designs the family an entirely new ride, featuring a curved lift hill and stacked brake sections, which made for easier maintenance and construction. Debuting at Oktoberfest in 1983, Himalaya Bond becomes the largest portable, non-looping roller coaster ever built. Featuring sweeping curves, loads of positive Gs, and even some surprise airtime moments, Himalaya Bond proves immensely popular among families with younger children too afraid to take on looping rides.
My parents did have other rides before they started roller coasters. They did start with the first looping coaster, a steel loop from Schwarzkopf, the looping star. That was their first, and they got hooked. I think my favorite moment always is the first drop and the hill. It's just when it lifts you out of your seat just this bit. That's the fun part, and to everyone, they say, okay, you don't have any loops. We kind of have one. The last curve is very, almost like a loop, but it's just horizontal.
But once again, the one-off design isn't profitable enough for the company, and Schwarzkopf, who never claimed to be a good businessman, is now struggling mightily. For two projects still on the drawing board, it's beginning to look like neither of them will ever see the light of day. Despite these headwinds, the company pushes forward with plans for an entirely different type of thrill ride, a suspended swinging coaster. Dubbed the Flugbahn or flying ride, the massive cars hung under the track and swung freely in the curves. While the concept may not have been original, a prototype built for 1975's Oktoberfest by aircraft builder Messerschmitt was shut down after 16 days due to excessive wear, and Aero Development's Bat at Kings Island lasted less than 2 years, also due to excessive wear. Seeing Aero's designs falter in Ohio, Busch Gardens in Virginia decided to contact Schwarzkopf to see if they could design a suspended coaster which would reside, ironically, in their German area. But the calculations for such a complex ride were immense. Too much for the team of Schwarzkopf and Stengel. To make deadlines, steel had to be bought ahead of time, and the engineering took much longer than expected. On top of this, the deposit on the ride was only $100,000, a fraction of the cost up to that point. After being notified that the ride would not be ready in time for the 1984 season, Busch Gardens opted to pull the plug on the deal, forfeiting a deposit and going back to Aero to create a design from scratch. The ride they create, the Big Bad Wolf, will go on to become one of the most popular attractions in the park's history, and despite some teething problems, opens for the 1984 season. However, things in Münsterhausen are not looking so bright. As a result of the canceled deal, Schwarzkopf is forced to file for bankruptcy on November 8, 1983, closing one of the most innovative and groundbreaking eras in the attractions industry. Never one to quit or take a day off, Anton Schwarzkopf refused to stop, even through bankruptcy proceedings, to continue his life's work, though his ride output would be significantly less than before the bankruptcy. He decides to open a small design office, and at the request of longtime customer and showman Rudolf Barth, modifies his doppel-looping design to include a third loop, dubbing it Dreyer looping or triple loop. Without realizing it, Schwarzkopf will soon find himself in the middle of a coaster arms race between two of Germany's most prolific showmen. As triple loop's design is being finalized, a Canadian group is looking to fill a massive space in their indoor theme park, itself a part of an even larger mall project than the world's largest, just outside of Edmonton, Alberta. They tap Schwarzkopf, who discovers that the space will almost perfectly fit his triple loop design with some alterations. Just a few days before Christmas, Schwarzkopf gives Edmontonians the ultimate gift with the debut of the world's largest indoor roller coaster, Mindbender. It quickly gains a reputation as being one of the most intense roller coasters of all time and a bucket list ride for most enthusiasts. Taking his focus back to Germany, Schwarzkopf returns home with another new order and a battle of the showmen. Half a decade before the American coaster wars of the 1990s, Schwarzkopf was more than happy to be at the forefront of his own battle back home, where only he was providing the ammunition. After seeing rival showman Barth have not one, but 2 record-setting portable coasters in their arsenal, Oscar Bruce was ready to take bragging rights back. Already owner of the largest non-looping portable coaster ever, they laid down the challenge: beat Barth's triple loop with 4. Schwarzkopf and Stengel did more than just add another loop. They reinvented what a portable ride could be when they unleashed Thriller. Throwing out nearly every norm that the duo themselves had created, Thriller drops jaws everywhere it visits. The nearly circular loops were placed back to back, pushing 6.5 Gs of force onto riders at their peak, making it the most intense coaster Schwarzkopf had ever built. After the loops, the remaining circuit featured an additional loop and a loop screw before finishing its extreme layout. However, while Schwarzkopf does complete the engineering and some of the structure, his finances do not allow it to be completed entirely on his watch. Instead, his work is finished by a partnership between German construction companies BHS and Zaire. Oscar Bruce once again claims the title of the biggest and baddest portable steel coaster on Earth, at least for now. With all of the work on one-off portables, a Swedish park brings Schwarzkopf back to the world of permanent rides with a challenge of their own. Create a coaster that doesn't invert and straddles the large hill that encompasses the park. Using his experience from Mindbender at Six Flags Over Georgia and Revolution from Six Flags Magic Mountain, Schwarzkopf creates what he describes as his all-time favorite coaster, Lisebergbahn. Featuring ground-hugging curves that evoke the Speed Racer designs, meandering turns over and around other rides, and a giant triple helix, Lisebergbahn quickly establishes itself as a coaster the whole family can enjoy together. Once again, Schwarzkopf does not build the ride, instead he contracts with Zaire. Not to be outdone, Gröna Lund, another Swedish park just a 5-hour drive from Liseberg, debuts their own Schwarzkopf-designed Zaire coaster, Jetline. Thanks to space limitations, this coaster too must weave in, over, and around other attractions in the park, and features a novel concept: a curved chain lift. Meanwhile, back in Germany, the great portable coaster war is still raging hot. Not satisfied to have the second largest and loopiest traveling coaster on Earth, Rudolf Barth goes back to his trusted ride design partner one last time and asks, "Can you make a portable coaster with 5 inversions?" Challenge accepted. Stunning crowds at Oktoberfest and around the world, Olympia Looping enters a class all its own, one that it remains unchallenged in as the world's largest portable roller coaster. Utilizing Schwarzkopf's large standard loops, his smaller Silver Arrow loops, and a large elongated first inversion, Olympia Looping dwarfs everything on the Midway wherever it goes. At peak operations, Olympia can churn through almost 2,000 passengers an hour, something most permanent coasters don't even come close to.
I think it was culture shock for me in the way that most theme parks operate with 2 or 3 trains on a coaster in a very safe and typical standard operating procedure, and just seeing the sheer speed in which trains were getting sent out in a pay-as-you-go environment was really eye-opening to me. And it just blew me away in every way possible, watching all 5 trains cycle like clockwork.
The ride also fixes an unforeseen flaw in Schwarzkopf's previous looping designs by adding right-hand turns. This helps even out the wear and tear on the trains, making maintenance easier. And once the fair ends, 50 trailers transport the entire ride to the next event. Most carnival rides today just need 1 or 2. While it was manufactured by BHS, who had become well-versed in Schwarzkopf's designs, Olympia Looping is the last coaster ever designed by both Stengel and Schwarzkopf. Sadly, Schwarzkopf did not share in the success of Olympia Looping. no new orders would come in as a result of the ride. And while Schwarzkopf continues to consult on and off for Zaire and BHS, he is once again forced into bankruptcy, this time for good. The Schwarzkopf coaster era has officially ended. After nearly half a century in the industry and several years as a special consultant, following this most recent bankruptcy, he decides to finally retire, having never taken a holiday. That year, he is honored by the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, or IAPA, by being inducted into their Hall of Fame. He is also gifted a special award for his contributions to the industry by the Union of German Manufacturers of Amusement Facilities. Now fully retired, Schwarzkopf can finally rest easy, but unfortunately, he does not get to enjoy it as long as he and his family wish. Anton begins developing the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and with it, Mr. Roller Coaster is no longer himself.
I took a direct flight to Munich and then over to Munsterhausen. Wieland came and picked me up, and we went to Munsterhausen to the nursing home where Anton was at. And the nurse comes wheeling him out in his wheelchair, and Wieland is there to translate, and Wieland's telling Anton who I was, and Anton didn't remember me. And Wieland says, I don't know, I guess you can't get your interview and talk to him. He doesn't seem to know who you are. And I said, I guarantee you he's gonna know who I am. You ask him about a day in Texas on Shockwave, and if he remembers a story about kids throwing up after they ate a Texas pink ice cream and rode his ride. And the translation took place, and he reared back, said, you're the one that makes all the money. And I said, well, I'm not making the money, but I am the guy, and I'm glad you remember me now. So he reached out, and we shook hands, and we proceeded to have a nice conversation in the courtyard at the nursing home.
After bravely battling Parkinson's for an extended period, Anton Schwarzkopf passes away on July 30th, 2001 at the age of 77. He is buried alongside his late wife Frida in a cemetery outside Munsterhausen. After Schwarzkopf's death, several of his classic attractions reach the end of their service lives or are removed for larger, more marketable attractions. With one notable exception. In late summer 2002, Six Flags Great America makes a stunning announcement. The Whizzer is being retired and replaced with a new flying coaster from B&M. Chicago will have none of it.
That was a very controversial time, right, when Six Flags Great America announced that Whizzer was going to be closing. I also think it was like one of the great moments in Six Flags Great America's history, honestly, because with a park like this, there's only so much room to add more things, and decisions have to be made at times. And I disagree with the decision from the beginning. This is my favorite ride at Great America, right? So I never want to see this close. But I think why it was a great moment for Great America was that they listened to people. When their fans and the guests spoke up and said, hey, look, this is a beloved ride that we love here, they listened.
After constant pressure from park enthusiasts and the general public at large, the park is forced to backtrack on their plans and decides instead to sacrifice Shockwave, an aero multi-looper that had gained a rough reputation. To this day, you'll be hard-pressed to walk up to Whizzer and not see a line.
I think Chicago loves the ride so much because it has a nostalgic quality to it. Like, it really does. Like, this is an original ride for Six Flags Great America. This opened with the park in 1976. It's good to know that the park seems to really love the ride and wants the ride to continue, and I hope it lives on forever.
Thriller, the record-breaking 4-inversion coaster that was brought to Six Flags Astroworld in 1998, lasted less than 2 years in Houston before being moved to another Six Flags park, Marine World, in 2003. It was renamed Zonga and heavily modified to increase reliability and lessen G-forces on riders. Unfortunately, the changes only made the ride experience worse, and after extensive downtime there, it was sold to Isla San Marcos Parque Temático in 2007. The large concrete pad built for the ride was left behind and is now used for the multi-launch Superman Ultimate Flight as well as a VIP lounge. Back in Mexico, Thriller operated sporadically through 2014 as Tsunami, when it was put into storage. In 2021, the ride was quietly scrapped. It seemed that many of Schwarzkopf's rides would no longer be thrilling riders for much longer. With so many of his rides revered by park fans around the globe, what legacy did Schwarzkopf leave behind for us? How is a company that disappeared in the 1980s still considered the gold standard of amusement rides today?
I think the legacy is really a push for manufacturers and designers of rides to always be innovative and not sit on their laurels, not just to take a concept and simply make it bigger and faster. Take a new concept and bring it to fruition.
There are only so many people on Earth that have that kind of vision, who can sit down, look at a space, and something comes out of their mind of what they can put there.
He was willing to take some risks. He was willing to think outside the box. He was willing to take ideas from conception to reality with the idea of, I want you to be impressed with what I'm doing. And he was the driving force behind what the Schwarzkopf company actually did and built.
You know what they say, bigger is not better, better is better. And he was just better. He knew how to build the rides. He put lasting quality into them. This is a 65 model, and it's running as good today as when it was new.
I think what Schwarzkopf taught us back in the 1970s and still leave us to this day is just his brilliance in design and manufacturing. If you think about it, the looping craze started in the 1970s, and so many of those rides have come and gone. But look at what Schwarzkopf's done. We have Revolution, we have Mindbender, we have Super Duper Looper, we have Shockwave. These rides are still around and they're still thrilling people because they're comfortable and they're brilliant. And almost 50 years later, they're just still so much fun.
I think us fellow enthusiasts love Schwarzkopf coasters because just the distinctive nature and the historical significance of what they were really designing and developing. So much of the engineering and technology that we take for granted today didn't exist. So to think about creating the world's first modern looping coasters and the dynamics of those rides all by hand and manual calculations really is astounding.
The two of those guys together were perfect bookends. And they made undoubtedly some of the greatest steel coasters ever built.
He was not afraid of steel, of weight, of carrying those pieces around, because he was a man with muscles, and I think that's how everybody remembers Schwarzkopf. When he was on site, he was not in his office, he was right in the middle of the ride. He was very much pointing out what he didn't like and what he liked.
While Schwarzkopf went out of business over 4 decades ago, what came out of that small Bavarian town continues to thrill riders to this day. The level of precision that was the hallmark of every Schwarzkopf design would be adopted by the industry, with the addition of computer-aided design and CNC machines in the late 1980s. The original factory still stands in Münsterhausen, although it's now a nightclub, but it doesn't take much to see its connection to its past. The second larger Schwarzkopf factory would be purchased by Hubert Gerstlauer, who went on to expand his company's portfolio into coasters of their own. Gerstlauer, now run by Hubert's nephew Siegfried, now builds replacement trains for Schwarzkopf coasters in the same space as the originals. Anton's brother Franz, who helped manage Dusen Spiral at the start of the company, would continue on creating his own rides, most notably the Wave Swinger. Wieland Schwarzkopf continued his father's spare parts business for many years before branching out on his own, designing attractions such as the impressive Sound Factory. In 2023, he announced a partnership with Premier Rides to create a larger, modern version of the venerable Wildcat. Sylvia Schwarzkopf, who helped interpret her father's ideas onto paper, would unknowingly become a trailblazer for other women to follow in the heavily male attractions industry. Today, more women than ever are taking up STEM careers, and their numbers in the enthusiast community continue to climb every year. Werner Stingel would continue his work in the attractions industry, creating over 500 different roller coasters for several manufacturers, including some of the most popular rides ever built. Intamin, Schwarzkopf's former sales company, would go on to build some of the world's most popular and intense steel coasters, all with Stengel's engineering seal of approval. Several former engineers at Schwarzkopf will stay in the attractions industry, giving coaster startups like Zier and BHS, which will become Mauer, the experience they need to create their own coasters. Revolution, the world's first modern vertical looping coaster, continues to bring in riders at Six Flags Magic Mountain, despite being surrounded by far larger and more thrilling coasters.
This ride is now approaching 50 years old, and that structure is probably the least worked on structure of any roller coaster in that park. It was designed right, it was built right, everything was considered. And remember, this stuff was hand-drawn on paper. You look at every roller coaster with a loop in it today, and that DNA traces back to Anton Schwarzkopf.
Super Duper Looper, the first looping coaster on the East Coast, also continues to thrill at Hershey Park, although it too has been dwarfed in recent years. The second-generation trains were retired in 2012 and donated to the National Roller Coaster Museum, where they are currently displayed. Ironically, the new trains were built by Gerstlauer.
The Gerstlauer trains have been fantastic. It added many years on to the Schwarzkopf ride. They run just like the Schwarzkopf, lap bar only, no over-the-shoulder restraint needed, and the Gerstlauer team was fantastic to be able to deliver a similar experience to the Schwarzkopf Super Duper Looper.
After traveling the German fair circuit and several stops in the U.S., Looping Star, the world's first portable looping roller coaster, still operates as Silver Bullet at Frontier City in Oklahoma City. Shockwave and Mindbender, the sister coasters delivered to the original Six Flags parks in the late 1970s, are still throwing riders for a loop in Texas and Georgia. They are consistently recognized as two of the best steel coasters on the planet.
Shockwave is my baby. I tell you what, Six Flags Over Texas has a solid lineup of roller coasters, but no matter what they put in, Shockwave is still my go-to ride. In my opinion, Shockwave has the perfect balance of positive and negative G's. You're out of your seat, and then the loops push you into your seat, and it's all wonderful.
The ride is so revered in Arlington, the city cemented its iconic look into a giant mural along Interstate 30, the highway that runs next to the ride. One of the rarest Schwarzkopf flat rides, the Barren Curve survives, but only 3 operate in the world. One of them resides at California's Great America in Santa Clara, California. In fact, the park is home to 3 classic Schwarzkopf flat rides, including a park model Calypso and Enterprise, which was recently restored in-house after years of sitting dormant. In just the past 3 years, several of Schwarzkopf's coasters have sadly met their demise. West Edmonton Mall's Mindbender, Grona Lund's Jetline, and Busch Gardens' Scorpion. However, many of the original Wildcat models are still marquee attractions at their parks, including the North Georgia State Fair, Adventure Park USA in Maryland, and at Circuit of the Americas in Texas. While the original Zambezi Zinger was removed in 1997, Worlds of Fun, along with Great Coasters International, reimagined the ride as a wooden coaster, complete with spiral lift hill, and debuted in 2023. The coaster was so legendary in the Kansas City area that the park invested heavily in the theming for the new ride, even throwing Easter eggs to the original ride in the line.
The reception was tremendous from the announcement to the day we opened the ride. Obviously, a name like that carries so much weight, and people knew it was going to be a special ride. We knew how big of a deal this was going to be to people, so we knew we had to do it right. And the reception overall has been overwhelmingly positive. People are flocking in droves to come ride this thing, and it's going to be a part of this park for years to come.
The original Zinger still operates to this day at Parque del Cafe in Colombia. Schwarzkopf's ability to make large attractions both portable and profitable would lead to an entirely new market of elaborate flat rides from companies like Fabry, KMG, and Funtime. They are now known as spectaculars. Thanks to their small footprints, Schwarzkopf's shuttle loops have certainly earned their frequent flyer miles. Both of the Great America tidal waves eventually reunited at then Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom, where they were combined to create Greased Lightning. Santa Clara's ride even made a brief stop in nearby Vallejo for a time, awaiting shipment. The ride was so beloved, when the first pieces were being removed, employees played Hymn to the Fallen from Saving Private Ryan throughout the park. After a brief stint in Kentucky, the combined shuttle loop was taken down again, this time to become a parts donor for Montezuma's Revenge at Knott's Berry Farm. Zoom, as it's affectionately known by fans, was partially dismantled in 2022 and is currently awaiting renovations. Parts of the ride were donated to the National Roller Coaster Museum, where they are awaiting permanent display. Kennywood's Laser Loop was eventually dismantled to make way for the aerodynamics-designed Steel Phantom. However, riders can still walk past the long mechanical room and some of the original footers while waiting in line for the Phantom's Revenge. Turbine, a Schwarzkopf shuttle loop that was partially enclosed at Wallaby, Belgium, was rethemed in 2013 to Psyche Underground and given a new train and linear induction launch system from Gerstlauer. As part of a tribute to the former launch system, the park integrated the old flywheel and clutch into the new Q theming. But the coaster with the most frequent flyer miles has to go to King Cobra, Schwarzkopf's first shuttle loop that debuted at King's Dominion in 1977. It was removed in 1986, only to be bought and rebuilt less than 4 hours away at Jolly Roger Amusement Park in Ocean City, Maryland. After just 2 seasons, it was moved again, this time across the pond to Alton Towers in the United Kingdom, where it was rechristened as Thunderlooper. After 6 seasons, the ride jumped back across the pond again, this time landing at Hopi Hari, where it reopened in 1999 as Catapult, and where it still operates to this day.
Sou suspeito para falar, né? A Catapult é minha atração favorita do Hopi Hari. Então a gente tem carinho muito grande e pessoalmente eu também tenho carinho muito grande. Foi a primeira montanha-russa com inversão que eu andei aqui no Brasil. Então tem uma história pessoal muito bacana com a Catapult. Bom, então nesse processo de transição de temática, né, de retematização da Catapult, a gente trouxe alguns easter eggs em relação à própria fabricante, né? Então na fila, na loja de saída, no próprio trem, vocês vão encontrar alguns easter eggs da Schwarzkopf e também do ano de fabricação da Catapult.
So, what is Schwarzkopf's ultimate legacy?
I think he is remembered as the Baron of Steel Coasters. He was named like this, and in some kind that's true. He was a genius developer, he was a genius craftsman, and he was a Bavarian. He was a Schwäbisch Bavarian, and if you would describe a Schwäbisch Bavarian, you should take Anton Schwarzkopf, because there's no other better person to describe a Schwäbisch Bavarian than his person.
I just hope that every park that has a ride of his shares that same love for his work to keep them going. I really hope that, because I want to ride the things, before they're gone. So
we are out of business since '84, so it's after nearly 40 years now, and still there's a group of people which like this product and which knows more about our family than we ourselves, and that's really very impressive, and that makes us proud, makes the family proud.
One is going to be the engineering, the smoothness, the trains, and all of that, just the fun and the way Anton designed the rides. And number 2 has to be the transportable versions that we may never see again in our lifetimes. They were all magnificent rides, and I applaud his entire team for what they created and gave to us as fans, gave to us in the amusement industry, and gave to everybody that has the pleasure of riding an Anton Schwarzkopf coaster. Job well done.
So the next time you see a portable roller coaster at your local fair, take on the challenge of an intense flat ride or see the unmistakable look of a Schwarzkopf train, be sure to give thanks to a German family from a small Bavarian town that promised to make the world more joyful and ended up turning the attractions industry upside down.